What's good, Titan Clan? It is your boy King Titan X back here with another video, and this video is actually pretty special. This what if is meant to celebrate the fact we hit 1,000 subscribers and we're still growing. Now, this what if was originally suggested by villain Deku on Discord via DMs, but I also have a Discord where you can suggest what ifs for me to do in the future. Even if it isn't fully developed yet, you guys can communicate with each other there in order to build upon them. I'll leave the link in the description, and it's in my about section, but that's besides the point. From the thumbnail alone, you guys can already tell what this what if is about, and you guys are probably wondering how your boy is gonna do it. Well, here's how this will go. All for One over the years fought many vessels of the Quake one for all, a fusion of stockpiling Quake that he gave to his weaker little brother and some sort of transferring Quake his brother had. He thought his brother was Quakeless and needed a form of protection, but it turned out that the Quake he was born with was nothing noteworthy, without anything for it to piggyback on. All for One would grow frustrated having to fight all these vessels of One for All. It served as a constant reminder of the mistake he made with his younger sibling. All for One kept close tabs on each of the bearers of One for All, alongside the potential candidates to receive the quirk afterwards. The first couple of users of One for All weren't too hard to take down, but the issue with the quirk was that it kept on getting stronger with each person that it was passed on to. That woman, Nana Shimaru. I can never pronounce that last name. She was the hardest one of them all to defeat. He hated to admit that she was strong, but it was true. Then there was her successor, Toshinori Yagi, also known as All Might. He was making waves in Hero Society. So many of his underlings were being wiped out by this force of nature that was known as All Might. He couldn't believe it. His whole empire was falling apart because of this one man, but he had plans. Originally, he was going to leave his quirk to Tenko, Nana's grandson, and raise him up to be a villain to fight All Might and emotionally torment the man. But he had a feeling that that wasn't good enough. He needed to go bigger, but he couldn't think of much at the time. An epiphany hit him one day, though. He wasn't sure if he would even be strong enough to fight All Might, but it didn't matter if he could anymore. What mattered was if he could get All Might's DNA. With a simpler piece's DNA, he could go on and start up this project of his. Yes, his plans were starting to form properly now. With the DNA, he could possibly make a clone of the man, but better, the ultimate counter to One for All. He'd have his own vessels from now on. He was too old and weak to fight as much as he used to, but if he could spread his influence onto these vessels, his legacy would live on. He sent out a spy in order to get some of All Might's DNA, whether it be saliva, blood, sweat, nails, hair, etc. It didn't matter what the form of DNA was in the long run. It would accomplish the same goal. The spy was in the form of a fairly attractive woman with blue skin and long black hair. She wore a black leather jacket and white crop top. She also wore leather pants. When All for One told her what her mission was, she nodded and vanished, considering the fact her quirk allowed her to turn invisible at any time. Very convenient quirk for getting out of tight situations. It took a couple days, but she was able to retrieve a couple samples of All Might's DNA, some hair strands, some blood from a fight. Pretty good amounts. All for One applauded the girl and began with the experimentation. With the DNA extracted, he began doing some genetic modifications. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to retrieve One for All itself. Not at full strength, at the very least. He wasn't sure if it could be transferred, but the data Dr. Uchiko was able to get while the clone was still in the process of being formed intrigued All for One. It appeared that the clone inherited the stockpiling feature of One for All, but at base level, he would need to build up that strength over time. The clone that he dubbed Izuku, as he grew sick of just calling him a clone, was developing too slow for All for One's liking. A regular pregnancy would have the baby, at the very least, show to be taking form. But in Izuku's case, he was trying to be born from a test tube. He was just barely starting to form, and he ended up transferring the project to the Blue Skin Spy. He already made the necessary adjustments in order to make the perfect super soldier and make it easier for her to carry the child. They developed in her womb rapidly. He was amazed at the speed in which Izuku began to form. By the end, he was ready 2 months early. All for One held the crying baby in his arms and smiled. He had the blonde hair, just like All Might. A couple of weeks later, he found that the boy had the brightest blue eyes, and they were already starting to walk. They were also growing in height pretty fast. By 9 months, Izuku was already speaking with fully formed words. It wasn't necessarily full-on coherent sentences, but at least Izuku was able to start comprehending words and begin to say them himself. 12 months and he went on to start speaking in full sentences. It honestly brought some warmth to All for One's usually cold heart. Even seeing Izuku play with Tomura brought a tear to his eye. What All for One was really anticipating, though, was when Izuku would start activating his quirks. In the genetic engineering part of Izuku's brain, All for One made sure to stock up on physical boosting quirks alongside some intelligence quirks as well, although those were harder to come by. From how fast Izuku was developing, it appeared that the intelligence quirks were working passively. They didn't need to be activated. Good. As for the strength enhancer quirks he collected and transferred to Izuku, his answer came on Izuku's 4th birthday, when he wandered off on his own and encountered one of Dr. Uchiko's Nomu experiments. He reacted by jumping and headbutting the Nomu. All for One saw the entire scene, and he simply watched as a mere child sent a giant being flying back. He was impressed. The boy's legs were covered in muscle fibers, although they weren't of the same potency as a villain muscular. He wasn't able to get his hands on that man's quirk, but he was able to get his hands on another person who had a similar quirk to the man, a washed-up boxer who was caught using his muscle augmentation quirk to increase his strength so he could have the edge in most of his boxing matches. After he was caught in the act and arrested, Kurogiri used his Warp Gate quirk in order to teleport the man over to their base, where All for One quickly extracted the man's quirk before he could even question where he was. He looked back at the man's fights and saw that he wasn't all that smart with his quirk either way, so he had high hopes for Izuku when it came on to using that quirk. He also gave the boy a hardening quirk and shock absorption quirk. They were meant to boost his defensive capabilities, as All for One was well aware of the fact All Might boasted a great amount of strength. In case the strength enhancement quirks weren't enough to take down All Might, at the very least, Izuku would be a good shield for All for One. The Hardening quirk could also be said to be a strength-enhancing quirk since it dealt more with density. With this quirk, Izuku would be able to increase his weight, strength, and durability. Appearance-wise, he would look the same, but it would be as if you punched a brick wall when fighting Izuku in that state. The shock absorption absorbed the impact from those punches. The stockpiling quirk would basically be feeding on all that absorbed impact, building up over time, making Izuku into an almost unstoppable force. Izuku had about 3 strength enhancement quirks. One was a muscle augmentation, while the others were hardly noteworthy. One just doubled his strength in quick bursts in exchange for stamina, while the other increased his testosterone levels so he could pack on more muscle at a quicker level. He could tell that one was working, especially over the years. Especially working over the years, as Izuku, by the age of 7, was already showing visible abdominals that even he was kind of jealous of. The intelligence quirks were more difficult to find, but he managed to snatch one and give it to Izuku before he was born. It essentially made it so that Izuku's brain developed at a faster rate than most and allowed him to comprehend things that were meant for people twice his age. He also gave Izuku this Siberian tiger transformation quirk sometime later. I know, kind of random compared to the rest, but oh well. Like around his 8th birthday, so he could do crimes for All for One without having to worry much about his identity. Over the years, he would teach Izuku that all heroes were fake. The society that they lived in was flawed, and that one of the very first steps to fixing society would be through taking out this symbol of peace, All Might. Izuku absorbed this knowledge like a sponge and would grow to resent All Might. It also helped that All Might left All for One, his master and father figure, in critical condition when he was around 9 years old, but he cheered seeing that All Might wasn't in too good of a condition either. He saw the entire thing and hid using his tiger quirk to make it look like he had a mutation quirk. He blended in with the crowd easily. One thing Izuku did notice though was the fact he and All Might looked pretty similar. He despised that fact, so he put in an effort in order to disassociate himself from All Might as much as possible. Going from getting green contact lenses to even styling his hair in a curly fashion and dyeing it black. He made it back to the decimated site where All for One and All Might fought afterwards. Kirigiri had already teleported him away after the rest of the crowd dispersed, but he was looking for All for One's body. Kirigiri and Tomura were with him at the time as well. When they were able to find his body, they found it was covered under a good amount of rubble. Izuku was able to easily break through the rubble and drag his body out of there. He sent the man over to Kirigiri and they teleported him away. All for One was sent over to Dr. Uchiko's lab in order to be treated for his injuries. Izuku and Shigaraki were brought back to another one of the bases that weren't already discovered by the heroes. Izuku wasn't able to see Alpha One in person much after that, but Kirigiri ended up being the one to train himself and Tomura for the next couple of years. And this time, Izuku would have been sent to an actual school with a birth certificate and every other necessary form of information taking into account. His surrogate mother, the blue-skinned woman, was the one to enroll Izuku into the public school and mentioned how he was homeschooled for most of his life. Obvious lies, but Izuku rolled with it. Izuku ended up meeting a cocky, blonde-haired boy during his time in public school. He immediately showed the boy his place in the pecking order. They tried picking a fight with Izuku over and over again throughout the years, but he failed miserably when it came on to actually winning a fight against him. It was honestly quite pathetic. He saw Bakugo's admiration in All Might, and it sickened him, honestly. It wasn't just Bakugo though. Everyone seemed to admire the man and they always cheered for the heroes. They tried bullying him for his dissatisfaction in the heroes on the news. But Izuku, he could care less. When he was in middle school, something he found out about was the high school that trained the very best heroes. It was known as UA. Apparently, All Might went to that school, which interested him. He even told Kirigiri about the school and he planned on attending the school. This news even made it to Alpha One. For the first time in 5 years, Izuku was allowed to go see Alpha One face to face. Well, he didn't have much of a face anymore, just a mouth, and they started catching up before the main reason for why Alpha One asked for him became apparent. So, you plan on going to UA, eh? Alpha One asked. Izuku responded with a yes, although it was more so to infiltrate the school. Alpha One approved and wanted Izuku to supply him with information about the school, whether it be their hero course students, support course students, their teachers, or basically any useful form of information really. It would all be splendid to have, so Alpha One could begin to start forming plans. He was confident that Izuku would pass UA's entrance exam, but still encouraged Izuku to train for the next 10 months in order to keep his advantage against the other student candidates. Izuku agreed to Alpha One's terms. He began training even harder than before, mainly through vigilante work. He would use his tiger form in order to get away with his crimes and evade the police. Thanks to Kirigiri, he was able to escape most of the time, even on the rare occasions where he was unable to get Kirigiri's help. He managed to fight off the heroes and hide until the morning. The worst fight he was in though was probably the most humiliating. Some guy made of sludge tried to take over his body, but they didn't plan on having Izuku fight back, especially with so much strength. He struggled though. He tried increasing his density in order to sink his way out of the sludge man's body, but it was unsuccessful and he was quickly losing oxygen. He was trying everything here. He was desperate and began using as much of his strength as possible in order to swim out of the sludge villain's body. His vision was beginning to fade, but at the same time, he was starting to make some progress against them. Right when he managed to release himself from a bit of the restraints, He saw a tall, muscular silhouette jump out of the sewer and punch in the direction of the sludge villain. He didn't even hit him directly though. The air pressure alone was enough to wipe out the sludge villain. Azuku was also sent flying back, but he was able to maneuver himself in midair and land down on his feet. He was panting and his vision was going in and out. He looked up to see his savior and his eyes widened in shock. He never imagined he'd meet the man so soon, and when he was in such a sorry state. That's all I have for right now. Just remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe to help with the algorithm. All that. Basically all the stuff that other YouTubers say. What else do I have to say? Oh yeah, I also have a collab video coming up soon. If you join my Discord, you can actually get some information earlier, like for saying what ifs I have planned and all of that. I usually end up revealing that in my Discord. So yeah, that's another reason for why you would probably want to join the Discord. That's all I have. Yeah, that's really all I have. Anyways, I'm not gonna stall you for too long. King Tinex out.